Washington Watch. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. This is a very special edition of Washington Watch. It's on the 4th of July weekend. As Americans now celebrate, they're also now prepared for what the one beautiful bill is going to do in terms of their economy, their society, their politics. We'll decode that for you on this show, but first up, the headlines. In a major win for the Trump administration, U.S. Congress passed Trump's sprawling tax and spending bill in a significant and hard-fought victory for the president and his domestic agenda. The multi-trillion-dollar bill is set to unlock tax cuts and funding boosts for national security, partly paid for by the largest cut to the federal safety net in decades. Trade talks between US and India are heating up in Washington, with both sides pushing towards a potential interim pact likely to be unveiled in the next few days. The agreement follows months of negotiations catalyzed by US President Donald Trump's historic tariffs that kicked in on 2nd of April, since both sides have reached the necessary compromise. US President Donald Trump says he'll start sending letters to about a dozen trading partners on Friday, settling unilateral tariffs ahead of his 9th of July deadline for negotiations. Countries will start paying the levies from 1st of August. Many major partners, including the EU, Japan and South Korea, are still racing against time to finalize their trade pacts. It's a slugfest between Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and Washington Post. Tulsi Gabbard has accused a senior reporter of harassing intelligence officers to use deceptive tactics to gather information. Washington Post has hit back. Condemnations are coming in. Which way this will end, nobody knows. The United States reportedly plans to hold talks with Iran about its nuclear program in Oslo next week. A final date has not been confirmed. Neither government has publicly acknowledged the meeting. The planned discussions could mark the first direct contact between Washington and Tehran since American strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities last month. All right, viewers, on to our top story on the show. U.S. President Donald Trump on Thursday secured a major political victory when Congress narrowly passed his flagship tax and spending bill, cementing his radical second-term agenda and boosting funds for his anti-immigration drive. The bill underlined the president's dominance over the Republican Party, which had been wrecked by misgivings over a text that will balloon the national debt. And the tax that could balloon the national debt and gut health and welfare support. A small group of opponents in the party finally fell in line after Speaker Mike Johnson worked through the night to ensure that the dissenters were able to brought back and one beautiful bill was passed. The bill squeezed past a final vote 218 to 214. It came down to that narrow of margin as far as victory is concerned, meaning it can be on Trump's desk to be signed into law on the 4th of July, Independence Day holiday. Now, this is him, Donald Trump, cementing his legacy. Now, what does the bill do? It extends tax cuts that were enacted in his first term and that were scheduled to expire. And in addition to that, there are a fresh set of tax cuts. Donald Trump promised these during the campaign trail. Now, on some, they were on tips, they were on overtime pay, all of it totaling up to about $4.5 trillion. It also increases the funding for defense and border security, cuts nearly $1 trillion from Medicaid, with more reductions to the food stamps program that is likely. It phases out clean energy tax credits passed under former President Joe Biden that Mr. Trump and conservative Republicans had long decried. So there's going to be a complete rejig as far as what the finances of the U.S. government are going to be under Donald Trump. As I said, this is him cementing his legacy. Let's first play out some of those reactions and a reaction from Donald Trump himself, and then we take the story forward.
And we're sort of celebrating like the biggest bill of its kind ever signed. And it's going to make this country into a rocket ship. It's going to be really great.
Mr. President. He met with a lot of House Republicans yesterday. What confidence do you get?
I think when you go over the bill, it was very easy to get him to a yes. You know, we went over that bill, and point after point, biggest tax cut in history, great for security, great on the southern border, Immigration is covered. We covered just about everything. Again, it's the biggest bill ever signed of its kind.
I believed in this vision. I believed in the group. I believe in America. I believe we have the greatest nation. I'm going to say this very simply, and everybody here would articulate it in their own way. We had a tough 4 years before this last election cycle. America we were in deep trouble. And we knew that if we won, and we believed we would, and we knew that if we got unified government, we'd have to quite literally fix every area of public policy. Do not take for granted what we have been given, this grand experiment in self-governance. We can preserve it, but we got to do it all together. God bless you. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
All right, let's get in my colleague Natasha Israni, who's joining us from New York to decode this in greater detail, the politics of it, the historic passage of the legislation, and what it means actually for ordinary Americans. Natasha decodes all that for you.
Well, one of the big implications for the bill here, firstly, in the United States, is that analysts are saying that it's going to adversely affect estimated 12 million Americans who rely on social programs, including coverage, medical coverage, and they're going to be adversely affected because the bill slashes that down and also changes certain rules around who can get it. And this, they argue, is disproportionately going to affect the elderly, disabled, and low-income families. Now, taxes are going to be cut for the mostly. Taxes are going to be cut, but again, the analysts argue that this is going to affect the wealthy more. It's going to benefit them more, but not so much the middle class, and certainly not much of the lower classes. That's one big impact of the bill. As you mentioned, there is a lot of money that's being put aside for border security, including more detention facilities. When it comes to India, now the US is one of the major sources of foreign remittances to India to the tune of 33 billion US dollars. Now, they have proposed a remittance tax on remittances from the United States, and that is to the tune of about 1%. It's still down from 3.5%, which was initially proposed, but 1%, that means out of $1,000 that are sent to India, 10%, $10 are going to go to the service provider. So that is supposed to affect H-1B holders, F-1 green card holders, and that is something a lot of Indians here in America are not so happy about.
All right, now the politics of this entire bill has also been extremely significant and pretty much gripped Capitol Hill. In the messy months-long process of pushing through this bill that divided their party, Republicans in both the House and the Senate made it clear that they too were uncomfortable with parts of it, criticizing the flaws before most of them ultimately banded together to ensure its passage. Democrats were united against what they have renamed as the big ugly bill. Jeffrey spent more than 8 hours sharing stories of Americans across the country who will be hurt by the bill, which he says takes a chainsaw to Medicare, Medicaid, nutritional assistance for hungry children, vulnerable Americans, all of that likely to be cut. And in fact, the Democrat leader had stacks of binders next to his podium, and he read the stories of people who will lose their health insurance, food assistance, and other crucial benefits. In fact, several of the Democrats were trying to ensure that the passage of the bill goes after 4th of July, missing the date that is so important for Donald Trump. But the slim majorities that were there for the Republican in both the houses, the Senate and the House. Viewers, this is as simple as how we have Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Ideological rifts within the party were frequently magnified as the speakers in the two houses, Mike Johnson in the House of Representatives, Senator John Thune in the House of Senate, the majority leader tried to muscle the legislation through both houses. They succeeded after protracted negotiations. The vice president also had to come in with his tie-breaking vote. So it had all the drama, really. The House devolved into paralysis on Wednesday and into Thursday morning in the hours before the final action as a handful of Republicans withheld their votes to bring up the measure. But ultimately, it passed. So this was the whole drama that happened. I want to now get in my colleague Disha Bagchi, who's tracked this bill very closely for us. She knows the politics that's happening behind it. But Disha, the fact that the Republicans have been able to ensure the passage of this bill before 4th of July just tells you how much Donald Trump has been able to cement his hold on the party.
Absolutely, Gaurie. So this bill really exposed the divide between the Democrats and Republicans, but also within the Republican Party itself, because we saw both the moderates and the conservative Republicans really voicing their concerns, really criticizing this bill. Even until the last day, we saw that 5 Republicans were voting no for this bill in the House and making it really impossible for this bill to be passed in the House. But later, after a lot of negotiations, including by Speaker Mike Johnson, we saw that this bill was ultimately passed. But first, let me just discuss why the Democrats were really against this bill. Their key concerns, of course, was the tax cuts, the major tax cuts for the billionaires and for major corporates, but also the fact that this was eroding the safety nets of the everyday American person, as well as really cutting Medicaid, cutting crucial healthcare services for the everyday American man. So really, these were some of the big concerns, and even after the bill was passed, the reactions have been very strong against the big, beautiful bill that Trump has now successfully passed. They even called it the big, ugly bill, even saying that essentially this is saying that the Trump government supports the billionaires and they don't really give a damn about anyone who's not a billionaire. But apart from that, when it comes to the GOP, when it comes to the Republicans, the moderate Republicans, of course, raised concerns about the erosion of the safety nets, about Medicaid. But conservative Republicans believe that this bill was not enough of an America First agenda, and that it was adding trillions and trillions of dollars into the national US debt. So that was one of their major concerns. Even as I mentioned, until yesterday, 5 Republicans were voting against it. But ultimately, the negotiations really helped pull this bill through House. But as I mentioned, they said that these tax cuts ultimately favored corporates over the everyday worker, which the MAGA voter base and Republicans ultimately support, and it's their major voter base. So really, this bill, not now, even now that it has been passed, it still really exposes that huge political divide that the that America is seeing today, and it's really also political gamble for the Republican Party. They're going to face the midterm primaries next year. So if this bill really does not deliver what it says and is seen as something that's harmful for the American public, they could face a major issue when it comes to the midterm primaries.
All right, turning attention now to the other big story that we are tracking, which is the latest as far as the India-US trade deal is concerned. It was something that has been in the works for some time, and there's a lot of expectation that it could be finalized maybe in days, maybe in hours. It is likely to be finalized before the 9th of July deadline, when the pause button that Donald Trump had put on the reciprocal tariffs actually gets kicked in, which means after 9th of July, the 26% tariff that was there, reciprocal tariffs, will kick in, which is why there's an expectation first round of the pact will come out now. How limited could it be? What could be the certain areas that would be focused on are questions that remain. But more importantly, the areas that are no-go zones for India is what is most important, on which negotiations are taking place right now. And that's exactly what my colleague Parmeshwar Bawa tells us in this report.
Mega trade deal between India and the United States is taking shape, but at the heart of it is a sharp tug of war over corn, soybean, ethanol, and dairy. This isn't just about tariffs or trade routes. It's about India's farmers, our food safety, and also our fuel independence. Let me just break down what's really going on. Let's start with corn. The US produces almost 9 times more corn than India, and almost all of it is genetically modified. India doesn't grow GM corn, and we don't allow it in except under tight quotas and only with steep tariffs. So where's the twist then? Well, nearly half of India's ethanol, the stuff that blends into your petrol, now comes from corn. The US says, let us export GM corn just for ethanol production. It won't enter your food chain, which sounds fairly clean, right? But not quite. Indian sugar mills already losing ground fear that this move could crush domestic sugarcane demand. And politically, it's a landmine, especially with Bihar, India's 3rd biggest corn producer, heading into elections. Next, let's move on to ethanol itself. The US is the world's largest ethanol exporter, and it wants India to open up fuel ethanol imports. But India says no for good reason. Fuel-grade ethanol in India is more than green energy. It's actually a strategic tool to reduce oil imports and give our farmers a market for sugarcane and grains. Letting cheap American ethanol in, well, that undermines the whole point. Then comes soya bean. Well, India allows GM soy oil, but not GM beans, or the soy protein cake used for livestock feed. Why? Because the GM protein is in the bean, not the oil, and that's where the safety and environmental concerns lie. The US wants to change this, but soya bean is grown on over 13 million hectares in states like Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, and Rajasthan, and prices, well, they're already crashing. More imports now, that's political suicide. And finally, dairy. This one's actually non-negotiable. India's tariffs on milk powder and butter are already sky high, up to 60%. And there's a cultural red line too. Imported dairy must come from cows, not fed animal byproducts. The US says it's unscientific, India says it's non-negotiable and deeply cultural as well. Still, some experts believe the US may use dairy as a bargaining chip to push through access on corn and ethanol. But the bottom line, this deal isn't just about goods crossing borders. It's about who controls the future of Indian agriculture, who controls the future of Indian food systems and our fuel supply. And for now, India is holding firm.
Right, turning attention now to another explosive story that's brewing on Capitol Hill, this time between the National Intelligence Chief Tulsi Gabbard and the Washington Post. US Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has come out with very significant allegations against a senior reporter working with the Washington Post. She said that the reporter is harassing intel officials and is using deceptive tactics to gather information. Gabbard alleged that Ellen Nakashima, who's the reporter, bypassed official channels. She in fact used a burner phone. A burner phone, viewers, is one that cannot be traced back. This is the extent to which the reporter has gone as far as Tulsi Gabbard is concerned, to be able to extract some information. This is important because just weeks back you had the intel report that had leaked out from Pentagon as far as the Iranian nuclear sites are concerned. Not totally on Tulsi Gabbard's table, but tells you that what's really happening in terms of the media versus the Trump administration. And this story, this slugfest, is only going to escalate. But where is it likely to head, and how damaging could this be for the government? This report decodes that for you.
Intel leaks, burner phones, and hidden identities. Sounds like the plot of a spy thriller. That's the fresh flashpoint brewing in Capitol Hill, this time between US Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and the Washington Post. Accusing a senior reporter of using deceptive tactics to gather information, Gabbard called the American Daily deranged at a time when the Trump administration is tightening the screw against intel leaks, from US strikes on Iran to other White House drama. Taking to X, the US intel chief alleged that Ellen Nakashima bypassed official channels using a burner phone to call senior intelligence officers and even refused to identify herself as a journalist. She also accused Nakashima of engaging in politically motivated journalism, targeted at harassing her and other intel officers. Nakashima, a national security reporter at the Washington Post, has been part of 3 Pulitzer Prize-winning teams, known for her coverage of intelligence operations and foreign threats. Washington Post executive editor Matt Murray defended Nakashima's work, calling her one of the most careful, fair-minded and highly regarded reporters in the paper, while condemning Gabbard's remarks as unfounded and personal, which reflects a fundamental misunderstanding about the role of journalists who report on government officials and hold power accountable, without fear or favor and regardless of party, wrote Murray. This comes amid escalating tensions between the Trump administration and US media, especially traditional media houses such as Washington Post, CNN, among others. And a week after the Pentagon launched a criminal probe into the leak of a classified Defense Intelligence Agency report on US airstrikes in Iran, which revealed it didn't significantly set back Tehran's nuclear program. Trump also publicly demanded that CNN fire one of its national security correspondents over her reporting. This latest slugfest is yet another flashpoint between the Trump administration and traditional media, which it considers a threat to its domestic agenda. Disha Pakchi for NDTV World.
All right, let's now get you the Washington Wrap segment on the show. US Supreme Court agreed to decide whether states may ban transgender students from playing on sports teams that align with their gender identity, revisiting the issue of LGBTQ rights in a blockbuster case just days after upholding a ban on some healthcare for trans youth. 27 states, most of them Republican governed, have passed laws in recent years restricting participation in sports by transgender youth. The court's decision to hear the case comes 2 weeks after the Conservative majority delivered a major blow to transgender rights by upholding a Tennessee law that bans gender-affirming care for young people. A Maryland man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador and detained in one of that country's most notorious prisons was subjected to severe beatings and torture, new court documents allege. Lawyers for Kilmer Abrigo Garcia, who's 29, alleged that assaults from guards within a day of his arrival at Seacourt prison left him with visible injuries. The Trump administration had previously alleged that Mr. Garcia was a member of the Salvadoran gang MS-13, which his lawyers and family have strongly denied. While officials initially said Mr. Garcia could never return to the U.S., in June, he was extradited to Tennessee to face human trafficking charges, to which he has pleaded not guilty. National defense areas will soon cover nearly 1/3 of the U.S. border with Mexico, empowering soldiers to arrest people who cross the border illegally. President Donald Trump's declaration of a national emergency at the border has allowed the army to sidestep a law prohibiting the military from civilian law enforcement. It has got a mixed reception from hunters, hikers, and humanitarian groups who fear being locked out of public lands across a cherished landscape. Listen in to a Border Patrol officer.
I want to make it extremely clear. Anyone who enters the United States illegally will be removed. Not necessarily just back to Juarez or to Chihuahua or right across the border, but also into southern Mexico. Individuals will face criminal prosecution under the United States immigration law.
All right, viewers, on that note, we slip into a very short break. On the other side of Washington Watch is a very special conversation that my colleague Alistair D'Souza had with Congressman Ami Bera.
How long's it been then? We met about 8 years back. What? Yeah, serious relationship.
He has this way of looking into my eyes.
Knows how to treat me. Gentle, considerate.
Did I tell you he owns his own business?
I think he's going to pop the question.
Better or worse?
Better.
Our opticians and audiologists own their stores, so your care is their business, which can make them rather popular.
Apparently, he's seeing half the town.
Book an appointment today.
It's great to be helping out before my first grandchild arrives, and after having a few repairs myself, I need to make sure they'll all be protected. Which reminds me, there's more than one way to help protect my family.
Welcome to British Seniors, the UK's #1 rated provider of over 50s life insurance. How can I help?
Hi, I'd like a quick quote.
You've come to the right place. We're proud to offer our seniors lifetime guarantee. With 100% of claims having been paid, we guarantee your premiums will never go up and that you'll speak to one of our specialists in the UK.
Wow, that's great to hear.
Depending on your age, your loved ones can get a cash payout up to £10,000. And the cover is in place for your whole life.
And what's the application like?
It couldn't be easier to apply. If you're a UK resident aged 50 to 80, you're guaranteed to be accepted, and you can arrange everything in a matter of minutes. There are no medicals or blood tests. Prices start from just £4.52 a month for £1,000 of cover.
Wow, that money could help with funeral costs or as a gift for my grandkid. I'll do it.
As the UK's #1 rated provider of over 50s life insurance, we're proud to protect thousands of families across the UK. We're rated excellent by Trustpilot and also rated platinum by FIFO. Plus, when you sign up, you'll receive a £135 gift card and free 24/7 GP advice and health services.
He's going to be named after his granddad.
Be proud to protect your loved ones with British Seniors. To get a free life insurance quote today, call our UK team on 0800 781 0770 or visit britishseniors.co.uk.
India and the US are close to a trade deal, as you know. India toughening its stance, we're hearing, as far as those negotiations go. The United States, though, telling India that it has a first mover's advantage by going at it sooner rather than later. Do you agree?
You know, again, I'm not in the room. I would not approach trade and tariffs the way the Trump administration's approached it. We've, for a long time, tried to get a bilateral trade deal with India. It's always been an elusive item. Maybe we can get one done. So we'd be supportive of finding a resolution here. I think India, to its benefit, to meet some of the things that we want to accomplish, could be a major hub for redundant supply chains. You know, certainly it has a mature pharmaceutical industry, mature vaccine industry. There's lots of it, you know, from a supply chain perspective, you know, we could move things over. You know, I'm a California guy, so Apple obviously is making some big investments there. Not thrilled with President Trump and some of his comments about Apple, but again, I think it's the right move to be moving some of that supply chain out of China and into India. And again, I think this is an opportunity for India.
Let's talk about the Democratic Party. Recent headlines that I've come across, all liberal press. The Atlantic saying Democratic Party slides into irrelevance. New York Times, the DNC is in chaos, desperate for cash. Washington Post, Democrats struggle to speak in one voice. What's happening here?
You know, I think we just lost the presidential election after 4 years of very successful legislation. Biggest infrastructure bill ever passed, the biggest Chips and Science Act, you know, major climate legislation, you know, biggest expansion of veterans benefits. So really good policy. But what 2024 said is it wasn't about the policy that we passed. It was about people not feeling better. They're hurting in their pocketbooks. President Trump spoke to a lot of those issues, say, I'm going to bring prices down, et cetera. What we've seen in the first 6 months of the Trump administration is they've actually gone in the wrong direction. There's more economic insecurity, et cetera. And if you look at the elections that are taking place, Democrats are actually winning those elections by larger margins. The next big one will be the Virginia governor's race. Abigail Spanberger is going to win that election. But if she only wins by 3 percentage points, maybe it's not a big deal. But if she wins by 10 percentage points, that is going to demonstrate a wave that's moving in this direction. Now, that doesn't mean, as Democrats, we shouldn't just run against President Trump. We should say, here's how I'm going to help you. Here's how I would address the world and some of the complexity of the world. Here's how, to the American people, I'll make the cost of food, supplies, housing better and more accessible. I think that's really what matters to the American public.
I bought cars on finance, so I've made my claim.
If our lenders charge hidden commissions, then I've made my claim.
I could be owed thousands.
I've made my claim.
I've made my claim.
I've made my claim.
I've made my claim. It's so quick and simple.
You could be owed thousands in hidden commissions from vehicles bought on finance since 2007, even without the details.
I've made my claim.
Trust myclaimgroup.co.uk.
Claims made simple. Dealing with my lot means making smart choices and trying to find the time to plan ahead. And with our family growing, I want to protect the life we've built.
Welcome to Smart Insurance. How can I help?
Hi, I'd like a quick quote, please.
You can choose a benefit amount up to £750,000 depending on your age, and you can personalise your policy with optional critical illness and children's cover.
Brilliant.
If you're a UK resident aged 18 to 64, you can apply with just a few health and lifestyle questions. For £250,000 of cover, the price starts at just £14.77 a month.
That's less than I thought, and could help my husband pay off the mortgage.
Just like families, not all life insurance is the same. That's why we offer the Smart Family Guarantee. We guarantee a straightforward application process, award-winning service you can trust, and cover from day one. And it's easy to arrange. You can get covered in just a matter of minutes.
That's good to know.
For even greater peace of mind, you'll also receive a 100% advance in the event of terminal illness and 10% cash back on your first year's premiums. That's the Smart Cashback.
Sounds great. I'll go ahead.
Our Smart Family Life Insurance is exclusive to us, and when you sign up, you'll get access to free health and wellbeing services. Plus, you get your choice of a £125 gift card.
Looks like my lot have learned to plan ahead too.
Protect the life you've built the smart way. To get a free life insurance quote today, call our specialist UK team on 0800 977 6858 or visit smartinsurance.co.uk.
This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV 24/7.
किसने दिया आपको हक कि किसी और नागरिक पर हाथ उठाने का? रेशमा जी, आप कानून है क्या मुंबई के, महाराष्ट्र के?
स्वभाषा का अभिमान होना चाहिए, मातृभाषा का अभिमान होना चाहिए, पर उसको आगे करके अगर कोई गुंडागर्दी करेगा तो सहन नहीं किया जाएगा।
Why is MNS so desperate?
आपके सभी कार्यकर्ता ऐसे मारते हैं लोग।
Hello everyone, this is the last word and I'm Maria Shakil. MNS workers seen openly slapping, thrashing, taking the law into their own hands. And yet, not a single arrest and no custody, no consequences. Now, after 5 days and a relentless NDTV campaign for law to prevail, the Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Devendra Fadnavis, this man, has spoken and has promised action. He also condemned violence in the name of language. The question is simple. If common citizens, ordinary citizens, had done this, would they still be walking free? Is political muscle now stronger than legal action? Where is the police action? Where is the zero tolerance promise? Where is accountability? This is not a party issue, viewers. This is a justice issue, because if violence goes unchecked, if thuggery is rewarded with silence, then the message is clear. The rule of law has exceptions. And if there are exceptions, then it's not law, it's power play. First up the story, then I bring in the guests.
Five days and a relentless NDTV campaign later, the system is finally shaken. Maharashtra Chief Minister talking tough on MNS thuggery and promising action.
इस प्रकार से कोई भाषा के आधार पर गुंडागर्दी करेंगे तो हमारी सरकार उनको छोड़ेगी नहीं, उनके ऊपर कार्रवाई करेगी। मैं वापस कह रहा हूं, स्वभाषा का अभिमान होना चाहिए, मातृभाषा का अभिमान होना चाहिए, पर उसको आगे करके अगर कोई गुंडागर्दी करेगा तो सहन नहीं किया जाएगा।
The Chief Minister assurance comes after days of the police and government dragging feet on action on the MNS goons, who were caught on video slapping a shopkeeper for not knowing Marathi. The brutal attack, filmed and shared online, is a stark reminder of the growing menace of linguistic vigilantism in the state. What's equally disturbing, however, is the Maharashtra government's lackluster response to this egregious incident. The 7 MNS workers were detained on Thursday evening, only to be released within hours on bail. Maharashtra Minister Nitish Rane's contradictory statements about their arrest and release have added fuel to fire.
Seven people have been arrested already.
But so far, what we do know, are you telling us all 7 of the MNS people have been arrested? The MNS goons that attacked the shopkeeper have been arrested?
Yes.
Initially, Rane confirmed their arrest in an interview with NDTV, only to later clarify that they had only been detained and interrogated with their statements recorded before being released.
मैं अपनी मालूमात लेके बात कर सकता हूँ। ऐसी मालूमात मेरे पास तो नहीं है। आपकी सोर्सेज, मैं तो महाराष्ट्र में मंत्री हूँ, इसके वजह से, मगर मैं इतना आपको विश्वास दूंगा, इस तरह से कोई भी अगर हिम्मत कर रहा होगा तो हमारी सरकार उसके खिलाफ कड़ी से कड़ी कार्रवाई करेगी।
All this while the MNS leaders have appeared on TV and doled out open threats of more violence. The MNS actions are rank hooliganism.